All right, welcome to another edition of the Journey to Freedom podcast. This is an exclusively for Black men podcast, as I'm trying to stay it out. Not that I only want Black men to watch it, but we're highlighting Black men that are doing something in community, so other Black men or other community leaders or other just men in general can see, hey, these are the things that we've gone through. These are the things that we've ever overcome. And this is why we're doing this, so that we can help community. Because we realize that community is everything, and being able to help people through community means so much to what we do. And so today I have Emmanuel White.
Wilder. And what's funny is, if you don't want to mess it up, my cousin is the former heavyweight champ of the world. So let's get the name right. I don't want to have to call him Deontay Wilder, if you know who that is.
There we go. So Deontay Wilder, cousin. Oh my gosh, sorry about that. I don't know. Sometimes, yeah, I just that's all I'm going to say. And I apologize. And that won't happen again. And I'm excited to have you on today, because he's going to talk to us about imagination. He's going to talk to us about vision. He's going to talk about initiative, how these things combine into our life, and how he has gone and developed business and his worth and what he does through helping people understand these things. Because the Bible says that a man without vision shall perish. A man that doesn't have initiative, that wants to move through. And I think he's going to share with us different types of initiatives and different types of what it means to us. But more importantly, what we're going to get out of today is seeing somebody who has gone from, his childhood, just like we all have, but to being somebody that the community respects, being somebody that the community wants to be around, being one of those associations. I talk about this often, how who we become is based on our associations, the people that we hang out with, the people that we spend our time with, those top 5 group people that are, on talking to us on a daily basis. Is even when you think about income levels, I don't know if you know this, Emmanuel, or usually the 5 or 6 people that you hang around with, in fact, I'm sure you know this, are usually within like $10,000 to $20,000 of income that you are, right? And so if your association, let's say you're not making very much money, because we probably talk about finance here, you're making $20,000 a year. Look at those top 5 people and see what those associations are, and then say, but I want to make $1 million. Well, how many millionaires are you hanging out with? Because if you're not, then we got to figure out how to. Now, I'm not going to say a whole bunch of millionaires are going to want you hanging out with them, and you just knock on the door and they say, hang out with me, right? You're going to have to evolve and develop into that stratosphere where those folks are at. But associations are so important. And this is one of those associations, whether it's association by podcast that we're doing now, or it's association that you go seek the things that he's doing out. And get close to him and his organization and the people that he works with, so that you can better yourself. And so, Emmanuel, again, thank you for being on the show. Thank you. If you could just start out just kind of introducing who you are, how you got started, where you grew up, all those wonderful things that can give us an insight into who you are.
Well, first off, thank you for the opportunity for, again, having vision for this type of work, the timeliness of it, and how it's landing with the audience, and really discerning what that target is. So really good work on your behalf. And I'm humbled to be a part of this. We were able to meet by chance. And I think that's where real collaboration and real change happens. No one's ever planned chance meetings, but those meetings always seem to have a bigger impact. So thanks for the opportunity. Emmanuel Wilder, I think before getting into background and story and where I'm from and then where I'm headed, it's really important to know my whole paradigm. And I've been fortunate to learn from great leaders. But for me, my whole sort of life's work is to get people to reimagine the word initiative. I think there's so much opportunity when we understand that term, embrace it in a different way, as a people, as a nation, as a group, as an individual. That interpretation matters. So I'll give you a quick example of what I've been doing in my work. But one of the fundamental examples is when I say the word initiative to a single mother, she's going to hear that and she's going to see it through the lens of putting her kid in a great school or sacrificing to make sure they have the right essentials to survive. And she's going to give of self. And I think that's one of the best types of initiatives we can have. I think when I say the word initiative to a child who's 4 years old, he goes, he sees a toy box. His initiative is to build a cool Lego set, and he shows action, and he shows sort of this, this primary nature of building, and that's what initiative means to him. When I say that word, though, to Napoleon Bonaparte and Alexander the Great, when I say the word to Elon Musk, they literally take over the world. Yeah. And so I'm not really trying to replicate that. We all have a different angle and a different lens. You mentioned scripture earlier, and I think it's really important. Some are governing or ruling thousands. Some are captains of 10,000. Some are captains of 100. Saul and David had a big quarrel around how many they were destined to lead. But the goal is make sure you're maximizing what it is you set out to do. Unfortunately, more than 80% of us, if we want to talk percentages, are not maximizing that. So it's not about making everybody Bill Gates. It's about getting the average thinker to reimagine destiny, and it all starts with initiative and a real vision. So I've kind of come to that precipice, as you will. My background, I'm from a town, Oak Park, which is a suburb immediately outside of Chicago. And that town really boasts some really great names of folks we know. Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, went to my high school. Ernest Hemingway graduated from my high school. Ludacris, the rapper, went there. I mean, the list goes on. There's a lot of cool people that have gone there. And I think just being exposed to that type of I think being exposed to that type of impact and seeing the wall of success every time you walk down the corridors of Oak Park River Forest, you're reminded of folks who are really making a difference and have really exercised their gift hopefully through a lens of purpose. And so for years, I've kind of really worked on not just self-improvement, but getting other people to sort of maximize where they're at. And that high school gave me really good roots in that. I think my parents, for sure, who made sure I went there, did great work to encourage me in the studies. I did really good in basketball, but I had an affinity for broadcasting, and I wanted to be the next Conan O'Brien. And I don't know if I was as funny as him, but I just didn't see limits on what I could do. And I think that's going to be a really strong foundation as we talk about, African American men and the plight, if we call it that, of our group. But it all starts with what we can perceive, and then how we understand those boundaries, either real or perceived. So from there, I was able to go to school at Marquette. I had a few classes with Dwayne Wade. He never never really went to class. You'd see him in the morning just kind of walking around. He was destined for other things. So I'm really, really proud of what he's done. And had the privilege to work with some cool people. I worked for Oprah Winfrey some years ago. And right now I'm proud to be the executive director of the Interview Institute. Okay. I'll wrap by saying that work has been really transformational for me, as it is intended to transform the thinking and minds of others. We want to help people really interview with the command or the language of leadership that's needed to inspire a person, not just impress them. And so I've spent some time talking to different universities and workforce development centers around the country, and they're all teaching their clients and students upon graduation, upon completion of a program, how do you impress the recruiter? I'm trying to get folks to realize the real key is how to inspire them, because that's where transformation happens and that's where opportunity lands. Can we inspire the boss? Can we make them feel good about coming to work? Not so much getting the job. How do you make that boss feel great about the career they've chosen? If you can do that, you get promoted, and I want to teach people how to do it. So in a nutshell, that's who I am.
Wow, I love it. I'm taking that. We've had a 9-minute conversation so far, and I've taken a page of notes because I'm so excited about some of the conversation, and I'm not exactly sure where to go with it yet. But I know identity is one of our pillars that we talk about, and shaping our identity. And I want to get to my dissertation was hiring Black administrators in public schools. So I definitely don't want to circle back to get to talking about your Interview Institute. But when we think about identity and you think about initiative and you think about, you explain the different levels of initiative depending on our lens that we look through. How would you help define or help us create an identity that is one that can move forward. Because I think with a lot of Black men is the identity that we hold for ourselves. You know, I don't know who it was. I think it was Tony Robbins that might have said, you know, the identity, being congruent with the identity to hold yourself is the most powerful force in the universe. But how do we do that? How do we move with the things in the work that you've done in initiative and vision and, you know, all these things that you've done? How do we help move the identity to a place that we can feel like we're successful? Because successful is, right, that's subjective as well. You know, as successful doesn't mean $1 billion. Success could mean that you've changed your community. But I think for a lot of us, we don't believe we're successful. So I'll let you go ahead and unpack that. I threw a lot in there.
There's a lot there. Yeah. Our identity, how do we move forward as a group? How is identity important in that whole effort to sort of, you know, help us upwardly mobilize and then laterally mobilize and all this mobilization? So it really starts with purpose, and it really starts with an individual sort of grasp of what that is, understanding your USP, your unique selling product, your unique selling purpose, your unique selling point of view, and not blending that, Dr. Brian Arnold, with other people's ideas of what identity should be. So, you know, it's a loaded question, and we're still trying to figure that out. But I think the second part of that, there's a sort of collective nature that real purpose is discovered in. And I'll back up a little more. Even before we can get together, purpose is always understood. People always say, what's my purpose? And I don't do life purpose talk. I'm not qualified. My life is not perfect. So I'm not a life coach. Career purpose is easy. Identity stuff is pretty easy because I have a cool lens to see it. But we talk about what it is we were sort of destined to do, or how do we first understand our identity before we can move a group forward. And purpose is always discovered in where you have a character excess. What that means is the thing that you have in abundance, the thing that you can't stop doing, the thing that other people say, oh, that's too much. Please stop. Please stop talking about that. Okay, you did that already. Okay, you're bringing it up again. You're smiling too much. You're critically thinking too much. You're helping too much. You're all that. You have that in abundance for a reason. It's in abundance to be shared and given to others. That's why you have extra. The people who can't stop laughing, I mean, they're not necessarily silly. It's that they have a purpose to get rid of some of that. And all that energy needs to be harnessed for others. And so purpose always starts there. Anybody can kind of think through what that is in their life that they have in abundance. It's nothing material. These are areas that are all character. They're foundational. They are the essence to who we are. And we have to understand what those are. I think after that, identity is always sort of birthed when purpose and destiny kind of marry. I don't want to get too philosophical, but we gotta kind of understand, you know, what our purposes are, how that destiny kind of looks. And now we can know how we're uniquely suited to work on that angle. Identity has been a struggle for men of color for many years, and intentionally, it has sort of been a struggle to sort of grasp who I am, what's my role, how do I want others to perceive me. Those who are thinking from a business point of view are simply talking brand. And sometimes our group, Black men, might not have a brand, or if they do, they have one that is just, this might be a little limited in how they should really be thinking about who they are. And so, you know, moving forward is another really big thing. But to answer your question, part two, we have to be collected and united to kind of move a thing forward. I want Black men to see themselves as parts of a body. Christ speaks of this. And the body can only move if all parts are aligned and know where they're headed. They can look different. They can do different things. They can think differently. They can have different skills. That's okay. Our identity should be just as diverse as the, you know, phenotypical skin colors. That's fine. But what we need to do, what I would suggest, not need, I'm no one's boss. What I would like to see happen is just work together collectively. And then we can see real change, we can see real progress, but we only can get together and unify if we all know I'm a finger, I'm a white blood cell that's on top of a kidney, I'm a white blood cell that's near the heart. Like that granular, that nuance, like, hey, I'm part of the nervous system. Hey, I'm the left nail on the pinky toe. If we can appreciate that, if we can be the best nail on that pinky toe we can, get others to buy into what we're learning about ourselves in this body, we could do great things.
I love you said character excess. And then I start thinking, okay, so what are the things that I love to do, or what are the things that I see in other people as a track coach or a business coach, or however you. What are some things that people can do? Because sometimes that gets squashed, right? We get excited, and then somebody else in our lives tells us that's not what we're supposed to do. You need to go do this, or this, or this, but that still character excess continues to surface. How do we develop that and find that and hone that so that we can utilize that to be the best we can be without the other influences that are in our lives that are telling us this is what you can do, this is what you're capable of doing, this is what you should be doing. I think there's a lot less of that probably than when we grew up, but still, I think of my sons and them thinking of like what their careers or what they should be doing and what they're really good at. How do you help people, or what are your thoughts on helping folks move through that?
It's a good point, because people will say, no, you should be doing that and you should be doing that. So now we're getting inundated with all these thoughts and we're being pulled to all these directions. I think one example or one pillar that helps is kind of removing money or financial gain or wealth from the purpose equation. Ooh, I have an idea around how that works, but there's two things I want to share. One is our 3:30 a.m. moment. At 3:30 a.m., all the criminals are asleep. The blacks are asleep. The white people are asleep. The rich are asleep. The poor are asleep. The only people awake are those that have night jobs. If they didn't, they'd be asleep too. Animals are asleep except the nocturnal insect. The point is, I picked that time because everyone's at rest. If I were to knock on your door at that hour, there's only a couple things, Dr. Arnold, that are going to get you up. There's only a couple things that'll get me up. Let's assume, for this example, your family is safe and no one has $3 million to give you, because people get lazy. I'll get up if my mama's sick. I'll get up if my kid's in trouble. Let's say they're fine. Yeah. And let's say no one's offering you a huge boatload of cash either. So now what gets you up? It's different for all of us, but I think if we're honest around it, because here's the thing, the question that I'm posing now, universities will never teach you. We usually don't entertain. And then by the time you're 80, it's like, oh, I really had a knack for this, or I felt inspired or alive when I did X. She only got a few more years to go and it's over. And so giving thought to these kinds of 3:30 a.m. moments is what I call them, really helps us to figure out, outside of the noise you spoke about, what it is that we are geared for. Destiny's going to come a little later, but how are we wired? And so for me, my example, I give it often, but if you knock on my door at 3:30 a.m. and you said, hey, Ball Arena is filled with 40,000 people. Right now at this hour, they need help acing an interview. They all have interviews. Can you come teach them? Before you could finish that phrase, I'm up, I'm in my suit, and I'm heading down. Yeah. Nothing else in this world is moving me at that hour, because that's not what I'm here to do. So as we think about those examples, it really helps us to kind of weed out the noise. I think the next thing is this sort of, I call it the formula of career purpose. I never really applied it to life purpose and identity, but I think it does help. I think our composition plus our perspective multiplied by curiosity gives us purpose. And so composition is just what you're made of. What is your structure? How is your day put together? What's your character? What's your capacity? Some of us are much better in one-on-one settings. Some of us are much better in groups. When you think about what you're what you're made of, And then you add that to perspective, how you see the world. Some of us are pessimistic. Some are optimistic. Some of us see the world from the from the top to the bottom. Some of us see the world from the bottom up. All that stuff matters. It's just the angle. We all see stuff different. Our value is in our perspective, is not in what we do. I can find robots that can do what a lot of production folks are doing. I could find folks like me who are way better and more skilled. They won't have better suits, but they will have better everything else. And what will happen is I'll be replaced. But what I can't replace, what they can't replace, is what I see, how I see the world. And I think that's really evident when you take the field of information technology. We take an IT professional. There are about 340,000 in the country, a million IT folks. Mm-hmm. Everyone can do what the next guy can do. There's one, Mark Zuckerberg. He saw something that none of those folks saw.
Yeah.
Well, technically, sir, he stole the idea from his counterparts, and there's a big. You get the point. The point is, he's the face of what happened, and what he was able to see really drove him to what he is now, 4th, 5th richest man in the world. We all have a cousin that can sing. There's one Beyonce. Everyone can sing. She saw entertainment differently. Well, sir, she just has lots of gifts and talents. We all have more than that. The thing is, she's unlocked a few, and we're still trying to find a key. And so I don't want to get too far off because what you said makes sense, but I hope those examples can kind of at least get people to critically think around, okay, here's where the gears are for me. And then if you multiply these two things, composition plus perspective multiplied by your curiosity, that'll give you more than purpose. That's going to start helping you inspire others, and all of us have a piece of that to do. So these things kind of help me, and that's what I think our community may lack sometimes.
I love that. And as I was thinking through it, the spiritual aspect and who we are, in whose we are. I think of, I'm going through a program called Call to Govern, which is through the Issachar Foundation for urban development leaders that they're developing. And one of the things that we came up in our purpose statement is God made me too, because he loves. And I start thinking, okay, so now I have my 3:00 moment that you just talked about that says, okay, at 3:00 in the morning, I would get up and do this. And then I start thinking about, okay, but God made me too. If those things come together, right, who can stop you? Or how could you be stopped? But I think there are folks that get stopped that way. I mean, what are your thoughts about, the spiritual side of your purpose that goes along with what your purpose is?
So, as we understand it as believers, the unseen is more real than the seen. So the spiritual realm is not this sort of ghostly Casper cloud smoke and mirror realm. It's in another dimension. It's really real. It's just not visible to us. And on the spiritual side, those are the elements that really propel us. They're always a catalyst for what we do. Catalyst is important because we don't have much time. So they're always, the spirit world gives us the energy. It speeds us up. Elijah's eating angels' food and he's outrunning chariots. Like, this real stuff. It's come from a spiritual realm. But the Bible says man did eat angels' food. That means angels are eating the stuff too. They're probably eating manna. It gives you supernatural ability. So the spiritual world has very real physical consequences in a good way. And I think it all starts there. Your question, I don't even know so much that the two worlds are married. It's one is real important and one is extremely solid and one is eternal and the other is a vapor. However, that fast vapor is still meaningful in the plan of our spiritual creator, of God the Father. So, when we talk about inspiration and vision and initiative, we talk about being indispensable, thinking about ourselves or thinking through our identity with all those I words I just said. None of that really matters, unless we have, unless we realize, to you from whose we are, what he kind of purposed us to do and how he empowers us to do it. there's people who are really considered successful by world standards and spiritual standards. They have a few things in common, and they're able to, in the faith realm, the spiritual realm, they're able to really lean into a power to help them accomplish things that they know they cannot do in their own might. That becomes important because you know it's a really big ask, and you know you have a big destiny. We all do. When you know you can't do the work, that's where God has to step in. If it's stuff that you can do, if you can run a business and start a 401k and make great investments, there's no room for him to really operate. Imagine what you could do, to his end with all that stuff. They don't have to be separate. It's not just, well, God wants me poor and destitute, but I'll save a lot of poor people and I'll work in the shelters and I'll build habitats for humanity. Scriptures teach us that the people that he uses all kinds, but he used a ton of rich ones too. he used rich ones. Esther was beautiful. He uses rich, beautiful. He'll use ugly, poor. To him, all you have to do is kind of be willing. And what I find fascinating is about these captives of industry and people that have so-called made it, who still have a humble spirit. They realize it was never really about them. It wasn't about their gift, their ability, their IT prowess, their singing ability, in my example. It was, they really truly believed it came from him. And that kind of attitude, although rare, is so important for our natural world to thrive, because you need that spiritual sort of battery, and you need his hand. Those who don't need his hand, do it on your own. But I think there needs to be more of a appeal to appreciating things of the spirit, that they are real, more real than what we see. It's counter to what we experience, because, hey, this is a mouse, this is real. I can't see the spirit, so it's not real. And modern science and the Stoics and the philosophers have convinced us, oh no, it's all experiential. If you can't see it, it's probably not real. But that leaves so many gaps, and we don't have time for that. But the spirit world is real. We need to believe it.
There's such an invisible world that is out there that I wasn't aware of as I was growing up, because I heard it, but since we've had these things that are devices that we can do so much, and somehow what we're doing right here, having this conversation in different parts of the world, or it's just, there is a world that God has designed for us. Hello, this is Dr. B, and I just love to thank you for being part of the Journey to Freedom universe. Thank you for watching our podcast and enjoying the content that we're creating. Our goal this year is to have 100 Black men that are successful, that are sharing their stories, that are showing you that this way of life can happen. We'd also love to have 100,000 subscribers this year, but the only way that we can do that is with your help, with you hitting that subscribe button and sharing this with others. We plan on creating greater content, greater guests, and just a better overall experience for you. So once again, thank you for being a part, and just go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Have a great, incredible day today. I'm going to pivot a little bit, and I have a couple questions that I really want to ask you, but one of the things is, sometimes I set up, when I talk about the word trust, and I kind of set up what it means and stuff. I don't want to do that with you, because I feel like the conversation we are having is so good. I feel I don't know if you've ever seen interviews with Thomas Sowell.
Yeah,
where you just know this is a brilliant man, and I just wanted to listen. So what I'm feeling here is there's so much that you're unpacking in here that if you're listening to this, you're going to have to listen to this a couple times, because I'm taking notes and I'm getting so much out of it. So I'm not saying you're Thomas Sowell. I'm just saying that I'm having a conversation that feels like this is where we're going. So I just want to say the word trust and then let you go, because I don't want to frame it, because if I frame it, then it has connotations of my beliefs, my thoughts. So just trust.
Interesting. Really good skill as a moderator. I'm gonna use that because that's cool. Say a word Robin Williams style and see if someone can just run around and go with it. No context, no framework. Trust. Go.
Trust.
So trust is really important. I think there are different views of what it means. I think there are different levels to how it's applied, and that has corrupted the thinking of a lot of people. They have trust is similar to the word love. Sounds pretty good, but the root sometimes can be on shaky ground. And so when you start using that word in relationship, to build a relationship, to evaluate relationship, and it's on a ground that is not solid, what happens is the word now is attributed to a holy concept, but we've understood it in an unholy way. And so now all of a sudden, trust to the world has sort of crept into our psyche and our sort of standard, when really it needs to be different. When you say the word trust, I'll try to talk about it in the context of our conversation and through the African American male and his lens and where he's at with spiritual connotations attached. But trust is, for me, it's, as you're talking, I mean, these are such big words and concepts. I think the way our worlds, the way our destiny, the way our character, the way our successes and achievements are all bonded together is through the word trust. I think it's all through trust, and I think it all has to be a trust in a higher power, trust in Jesus Christ, a trust in God the Father. I think we can get away with the polluting of that word. But at its core, God has always designed us as these agents who need to trust to a degree. He's made us a little lower than angels, a little lower than himself. So he doesn't need us to determine if we want a ham sandwich or a turkey sandwich today. That doesn't take much faith, trust, guidance. But what he does appreciate is when we can defer, not just big decisions, but when our whole existence is rooted in this idea, the symbiotic relationship that he is cause, we are effect. If we can trust that, we will reach destiny. We will be united as a people. We will grow enterprise because he's cause, we are effect. There's two simple concepts, but it takes an eternity to unravel, and we have to trust that he's cause. He's outside of everything else. I think real trust has to start there. Unfortunately, through vehicles of not just social media, but as the world gets more knowledgeable, as people start to interact more, there's different understandings of the word trust, and there's different measurements of it. It's been broken usually. I guess I could have started with everyone has had trauma in trust.
Yes.
Everyone. And so usually that doesn't get fixed. I broke my pinky here when I was playing football at Marquette University. And that night, all I did was kind of pull it back in place. But to this day, it wasn't set right. And it's always bent. And I'll probably go to my grave with a bent little finger because I didn't set it right early. Trauma is going to happen to us. Trauma will break our trust. Trust is so important because that's what little kids have. They're so naive. They're so loving, but they're full of trust because they usually hadn't had trauma yet. And so they can trust in a God, they can trust in a mother, they can trust in a bishop, they can trust in a preacher, they can trust in a system because it's not broken. There's no trauma. But when trauma happens, it starts to expose things. When Adam and Eve are eating fruits, it's exposing things. The stuff was already there. They've been naked the whole while, but now they see it. Now they're starting to see things that they needed a mentor to walk them through, not experiences they should have understood on their own. Because when you're doing that, you're trusting in your own lenses, your own experiences, your own senses. And now trust has become polluted. So I think that's the core of it. And the unadulterated trust is a trauma-free trust. We have a dilemma. All of us have had trauma. So now how can trust be trauma-free? We have to work back towards that. We have to regain that, not from the Father. He didn't break it. It was trauma that did it to us. It was an enemy. It was circumstances that have broken trust. So trauma and trust is such a relationship. People who don't have trauma till later in life will all have it, but people who don't have it till later are more trusting. They've built that muscle longer. They've had no reason to doubt, and kids are the best example of seeing this. So, you know, yeah, that's its own kind of issue there. But I think there's that relationship, trust and trauma.
I am so glad that I said it that way, because on all these interviews, and trust is one of my pillars, is as the 5 pillars of working into our journey to freedom. And I've never heard it put that way, where the trauma interacts to trust and stops us trust. And so that answers a whole bunch of questions as to our experiences as Black men and what that trauma was, and how early. You think of homes without fathers in it, or you think of taking men out of homes, or you think of our slavery experience. This is part of our DNA. If I take that from the macro, which you did such a great job, into the micro, and I think about interviews and how I show up, what kind of trust do I have to have? Like all the skills you're teaching, but what kind of trust do I have to show up to an interview to be successful in the interview? If my belief system believes that whatever I'm believing about the people that are interviewing me, won't that affect my ability to interview well?
Yeah, because now you've got trauma interfering with trust, and then trust is one of the early precursors to real confidence. Confidence is only established when purpose is known. Purpose leads us to destiny. So now, if your trust is shaky, your confidence might appear somewhat gathered and composed, but it's also going to be shaky too. So we talk about the interview, as people are not just interviewing, but as they're going out into community and making financial decisions, they're trying to build capital. There's a whole world that their confidence lacks, and because of that, they'll say some of the right things, they'll look the right part, but confidence is one of those spiritual things that we cannot really touch. We just know it when we see it, we feel it, we experience it when it's there. It's spiritual, it's really real. And so one of the issues, because there's been trauma and a breach of trust, that has affected our confidence on these, sort of interviews, or as we get to these, big tables and we get to sit with decision makers, confidence is kind of gone. But there's always a solution. Always a solution, and that really starts with re-engaging with our Creator, understanding God's design for us, macro, and then knowing His plan for us, micro, and then really taking time to unknot the trauma and deal with it. And it's messy, it's different for everyone. Some people's traumas are, I won't say more real, but I would just say very different than some other. Trauma is just how you deal with tragedy. That's all it is. So it's we all go through it, but I think it's in the Creator's hand how He can help us unknot some of those tight spaces and really leads us to confidence. Trust in the Black community is huge, whether you're talking about medical trust in doctors back in the the 30s, or you're talking around, and some people say, well, even now, even today, I do think there's a danger in not trusting anything because of what they did to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I do think, you just want to be wise and understand the only person who's got your best interest at heart 100% of the time, there's two people: Jesus Christ and your mom, and that's it. Like, there's only one to love you that much. Sometimes mom might not be one of those mothers, but it's having a faith in that. And as you're in that 3:30 a.m. moment, taking time to pray, taking time to invite Him in to these decisions. You're right. I mean, on those interviews, as we do business, trust is breached, confidence is affected. We see the results. We see some of those negative impacts, that missed opportunities that we've not gotten because confidence didn't quite lead to purpose. And so now what we do is we'll put on some masks, or what we'll do is we'll have the biggest thing, newest phrase coming around, what's it called? fraud, not fraud, but it's the identity. It escapes me.
Okay. You'll think of it before the end of the
I'll think of it. But imposter syndrome.
Imposter
A new
syndrome.
phrase. A new phrase that just got coined 10 years ago. It's always been around, but somebody told me once, it takes a lot to be an imposter. You have to put on clothes that are not yours. You have to put on makeup that's not yours. You have to act in a way that's not you. So that's not a good thing. And the fact is, we're trying so hard to be someone else in an effort to show our real self. It's just so mixed up. And that's how the enemy can play on that. That's how we can stay stagnated in our growth. That's how unity is breached and broken. And you get a lot of scattered leaders. I think we have tremendous leaders in our community. There's not enough unity. So I don't care about leaders. I care about unity.
Well, and as I'm just thinking about like in the interview and showing up if you're out of purpose. And where's your confidence if your 3 a.m. moment, this is who I am. And now I've been asked to interview for something that doesn't have there. Plus, I have the trauma of, I don't believe these people are genuine, or I have the trauma of, the last time that I did an interview like this, it didn't go well. Or the last time I got hired and this and this and this happened. And we bring all that stuff. And then we go to you and you have to like unpack it and say, no. Here's what you really need to do. Like you said, there's answers for everything. I want to talk about money, and the reason is because in all of our interactions and all the things we're talking about, and I don't 100% don't believe money is everything. However, money is what allows us to move through our lives in the ways that maybe God has us to, or that God would love us to, or that God has purposed us to. It's a thing that we spend most of our time in our days either trying to make or use. I don't know if there's a 10-minute period in time in my life where I'm not spending money, because I have all these auto drafts and I have electricity on and I have, that would be every second, right, that I'm spending money. So it's something that's super important. And yet in our community, we choose not to talk about it. We choose not to learn how to utilize it in ways that it's worked for others. What are your thoughts about growing a money thought process or a money? I can't even think of the word that I'm trying to think of, but I think you're understanding.
Mindset, yeah.
Mindset. There we go. There you go. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think money and health in our communities are kind of taboo, and we just don't talk about that stuff with just anybody. And you'd think we'd be past that, but you can know about the deeply entrenched traumas that we needed unknotted. Yeah. So you're talking about a lot. There's poor, there's poverty, there's all these different kind of mindsets, very different vehicles. Yeah, it's a good point. I think money. So I would challenge my students years ago, and I would teach the financial course I taught, and I would always ask them, "What's the purpose of money?" And they would say, "To buy this, to buy that." I don't know. And while we use it for that, it's only got one purpose. That purpose is to grow. That's it. It's not to spend. It's to grow. No one really thinks of it like that, though, except the billionaires, because they've understood something. They've understood, I don't need to spend this. It'll just multiply if I invest here. And I'm not all, I'm still learning around investment vehicles, but they understand its concept at that fundamental core. All these dollar bills are seeds to grow bigger gardens, not so much seeds to grow a fruit to eat. And so if a people's mentality is around, let's make enough so we can start eating, you've missed the point. You have people who make generational wealth in these sports, arenas, but it's not so much to invest. It's so they can have enough of a nest egg to support a generation or two and just eat that. And we'll invest some. But the real purpose is to enjoy life. We're about to be dead soon. We need to turn up. And while I think, when you can get to a certain point of money in this country where you cannot spend it, where you will always make more. because Floyd Mayweather, 800 million, he can buy 10 diamond Rolexes. We call it a waste. It probably is, but those Rolexes are still worth money. So he didn't even get rid of the money. He just transferred it to something else. It's too much to get rid of. But I think understanding money, first as seeds that need to be grown. And then do we really believe that? And then secondly, do we see the seed harvest process kind of happening? God's all about seeds and harvest. He's all about growth. He's never really about eating. And if he is, just a small portion to expand that which he gave you. The Bible's littered with examples of how he is determined his seasons to work. Seed, harvest time, reaping and sowing. And he reprimands people in parables who did not invest his money. Some people hid it. And when the master came back, he said, why didn't you invest it? I want more. Oh, no, I was trying to be humble. Oh, no, I was trying to take care of my family and stuff. Oh, no, I was just going to eat for me and just be little old me. He didn't make little old hymns. Here's the problem. What he made was people a little lower than him. We are not deities. We are none of that stuff. We don't become deities. We get new spiritual bodies. We get to fellowship with him as he would have had it from the beginning. That is good enough for us. But what I'm saying is we're so much beyond, what we sometimes live in. And it starts with money for any group. Lastly, I'll say this. There's principles in scripture that don't care if you believe in God or not. These are principles that work for Satan. They work for your favorite bishop. They work for your holy grandma. They work for Jesus Christ. And they work for someone who hates the name of God and everything in between. Sometimes we don't believe that. We think, well, it don't really work for all of them. It does, because it's a principle he's put forth. So you'll see people with ungodly amounts of wealth who don't love God, who have it all because they understood something. They would say it's investments. It's not really what God calls it. He calls it seed and harvest. He calls it reaping and sowing. But the point is they've taken this principle and they made tons. We can do the same. I just want, our community, and I've learned from my own community. My mom, my wife will talk to me about, it's cool stuff. So it's about, all that stuff I had to learn. We're doing great. We just learned to read. It was legal for us to read, in the 20s. That's not bad, man. Like from just being able to legally go to school and not harassed. I mean, you get harassed up into the 60s when you have these kids going to Arkansas. So just to have a regular education, and you can see the folks that have been produced in less than a century, that is fantastic work. Imagine if we had 2 centuries. So I'm very proud of where we come. But the money game, it doesn't take ability and skill. It doesn't take gifting. What it takes is trust. And
there we go.
Said the seed harvest principle. If you trust that, you are going to see your finances really start to increase. And what he'll do, he'll give you more. His job is to, one of his jobs, he said himself, is to help, spread this around to others. He blessed Abraham, and David was wealthy, and Solomon is super rich. And you can just go through scripture. He doesn't care about the money. He cares about how can we use this to help others? How do you leave an inheritance for your family? God said, if you don't leave an inheritance, I got an issue with you. So that means he expects you to have something when you pass on.
Yeah, and there are principles, and what's so amazing in this day and age is we have access to those principles and into finding exactly what God would have us to learn about. And you think of like, I will go learn how to do a sprinkling system and replace a head on a sprinkler on YouTube, but I won't go and learn about principles of money because somehow either I think I know it or I'm scared that it will reveal a lack in my life or a knowledge, or I'm not knowledgeable enough about it. And what's funny is so many people suffer for so long because they're not willing to learn the principles. And so I would say, I will give you some principles. Just see, put comments here. Emmanuel will give you some principles. We will send you the things that you need to start working on it if you're not willing to have conversations. But we have to have more conversations. One that he talked about is about money. And we need to be talking about money a lot more than we do. The next one is health. And so we don't talk about health either. And so I'm going to let you spend a few minutes talking about what are some things that you do, or some things that we can do, or some things that we should understand about our health in order to live longer, because none of this is fun. None of this makes sense if your body doesn't work. And our African American men life expectancy is 72 years old. I'm getting way too close to 72 to think that that's how long I'm going to live. My dad's 85, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Wow.
But there's no way. I mean, obviously, we don't know the time that we're going to leave the planet, but there's some things that we can do. And so maybe talk a little bit about health.
Yeah, I think, and this is just sort of globally for this point, but since our rates are higher based on different factors, based on trauma and trust,
Yeah.
It starts with one word, appetite. And the Bible's pretty clear when it says, taste and see the Lord is good. And we read and say, oh, yeah, he is good. Ooh, girl, he so good. What he's trying to say is, if you eat the right things early, if you taste of him and build a rhythm or a cadence for the things of God, and for how you can digest the foods of God to produce service and wealth and all these cool things, your appetite for life changes. He's using a food analogy, and I'll use it as we go into health. It's around building the right, not just habits, but appetites. If you don't taste the wrong thing, not even the wrong thing, if you don't taste a certain thing, you'll never like it. You'll never dislike it. It becomes neutral. So I think in our community, it's not just the foods. I think that's huge, actually. I always say that's a big deal. But it's the whole thinking around vehicle. We are vehicles and bodies. And some of us put better gasoline in our cars than we do put in ourselves. We will eat some of the processed stuff, but the car gets grade A gas. We will eat some of the manufactured items, but the motorcycle is getting top-notch oil. And what that's showing is we've got a very different understanding of life expectancy. It doesn't have to end at what the stats say. We can live longer. I'm not saying you're going to live forever, but we can go a lot longer. That stretches out our capacity, our mantle, our purpose, our destiny. And it starts with the right appetite. So I think a lot of it comes from education, and not just some of the basic food groups, but really kind of finding an enjoyment in eating healthy things. God didn't say the fats of the spirit. He didn't say the oils of the spirits, the sweets of the spirits, the candies of the spirits. Now, God does let you eat fat. You read about it. He told the priest, you get the best cut of fat. And I love that verse because I love fat. I love to eat the fat part of a pot roast or ribs and these beef ribs. But he said they're fruits. And he didn't say the vegetables of the spirit. There's a whole breakdown of why he kind of used that. But he's trying to get us to see, if he's connotating this stuff with fruit, we need to be eating a lot more of it. I don't want diabetics to just eat strawberries and get sick off the glucose. So I'm not trying to encourage that.
Exactly. Yes.
But health is more than just what we eat. I think it's really a whole kind of understanding of kind of your place in the community, and then how you take care of this vehicle. I think sometimes we just don't know. I was talking to my dad on Mother's Day. I was talking to my father, and I was like, yeah, I remember the time you said some of our cousins don't even know they have a pancreas, or they have no idea what a liver does.
Yeah.
And I don't profess to be a doctor, but these are things that you should know exist within you. And some people in our community don't even know they have a spleen. And so if you don't know that, then what you do know is Burger King's got a $4.99 meal, and this food desert's okay because they got some flaming hots. And I'll eat salad once in a while, but and that stuff, man, the whole world is on notice from the processed foods, from not letting the earth rest and reharvesting the crops the right way. But our group specifically has to do a lot more to educate ourselves. Same bodies as other people have. Each group is prone to more genetic things. We get that. That's a part of the fall of man. These things are going to happen, but we don't have to let them kind of govern our existence. We can start tasting some of the right things and building an appetite for them early on. I would love kids to eat more. And I think they kind of are as the world gets more global. You'll have little kids with friends in China they never met, and they're talking about eating some kimchi, whatever. But until that happens at whole scale, we're at a disadvantage, and our goal is to taste the good things, stay away from the bad.
I love it. I love it. I follow a guy on YouTube, Myron Golden, and he has one of his YouTube is called Satan's Secret Weapon, and Satan's secret weapon is food. And he kind of talks about all the way back to Eve in the Bible, and eating of the fruit, and he goes through the Bible and all the different times that food has impacted our growth. And so I love the fact that you said that. Emmanuel, I know we have about 5 minutes left, and I know at the beginning of this conversation, which I have thoroughly enjoyed,
Me too.
about going into broadcasting and being a person who likes to talk and being a person who has things to say. So I want you to take the last 5 minutes, and whatever it is that we didn't cover, or whatever it is that you would love whoever listens to this particular podcast to know, or to understand, or to even start the process of thinking about, because we're not going to get into, a whole bunch in 5 minutes, but I want you to take your time to be able just to discuss whatever I didn't ask you.
No, thanks for the platform, the opportunity. Really appreciate the trust as we talk about, and just having you as a moderator flow through this. I'll leave on this one thought. I want everybody listening, whether this is recorded or live, I want us to do a little activity. I want you to say your age, and then I want you to snap your fingers at the same time. I'm going to do it for us now, and then I want you to do this whenever you get the urge. So here we go. 39. That's how many years are gone that fast. See, that's how this thing works. Like, it's not so much, oh, I'm 19. I'm going to roll into university. Or I'm 60. I got about 20 years before I check out. It's about snapping the finger. That time is gone. It happens that fast. When they say stuff went by that fast, I just proved it. So because of that, everything we do has to be geared or leaning towards purpose. That's the only way we're sustained. That's the only way time is managed. The Bible tells us, or Moses wrote this psalm. This one is attributed to him. He said, teach us to number our days. This stuff is running out, and we have so many people dying. That's not a tragedy. The real tragedy is they didn't know what purpose was. If a 3-year-old passes away in purpose, that's much better than a 90-year-old who thought he changed the world outside of purpose. It's about purpose, and so timing helps us stay true to that. So that's something I'm challenging myself with every day. I'm not reached all this stuff. I'll just learn from great men, and I'm still trying to share what bits and morsels fell from the table. But everything we do can yield the results. You just have to outwork the person in front of you. My last thought: Tom Brady has dedicated his life to avocados and eating right. And if it affects his performance on the field, he wouldn't do it. If that meant one more joke, he wouldn't tell it. If it meant one more avocado fry was going to slow him down, he wouldn't touch it. If it meant one more date with his wife, Giselle, who's a supermodel, ex-wife, he wouldn't go on the date because he's got to win rings. I'm not saying that's how we need to live. Like, who knows if he got it all right. What I'm saying is have that kind of mentality, and we'll see how purpose and destiny really align for our community. So
I love it. Oh man, that's so good. I was recently, somebody took a tape measure, and they told me the kind of same concept, pulled it out and said, okay, pulled it out to, I don't know, 72 years old, the age of that black men live to. And then they said, okay, now put your finger at your age. My case, it was 59. Then there was like this much left between where I've lived and my average life expectancy. It said, like you said, just like that, right? And it is so important. And so, oh my gosh, I hate that we're done, because this has been such an enlightening conversation. And I honestly, I felt like when I was watching you, I felt like Thomas Sowell was talking to me in our areas of the things we're talking to. And he's probably one of the greatest economists that has ever lived. If you haven't watched anything through him, look up some YouTubes. They'll be like 1970s film strips, but they are so good. And just, your thoughts on trauma, and the thoughts on health, and the thoughts on trust. It's just been just so enlightening. And so hopefully we'll be able to do this again. I appreciate you again, taking the time and the effort to be on another episode. I hope that folks watch this. I hope they watch it over and over again, because I think there's so many nuggets that you talk to us about that we can apply in our lives. And that's the big thing is, it's great to hear this, and if you stay here for the whole hour, that it was enlightening and maybe even some entertaining in some parts. But if there's no application, if you're not taking any of the things we talked about and either learning more or applying it or putting stuff, then this hour was just so that you, I guess, could learn a little bit more about stuff. So I'm encouraging you to apply these concepts that we talked about today, and then keep listening to other episodes as we do more, because this year we will get 100 Black men that are going to talk just like Emmanuel talked today. So thank you again, Emmanuel. I appreciate you being on. Look forward to talking to you again. If there's other folks that that I need to have on there, because I know you can't talk the way you're talking and not have other mentors and other people who have helped you along the way. So thank you again for being part of it.
Thank you.